listening to The Doctor's Corner with Dr. Kline and Janelle Elgaway.
Good evening and welcome to the Doctor's Corner on Call 360 Network. I'm your host, Janelle Elgaway, and Dr. Kline is live from Washington, D.C. Welcome, Dr. Kline. How are you this evening?
I'm just standing.
I hear you are in an airport.
I'm in the Ronald Reagan Airport, and I usually don't call it that because it's fired all the air traffic controllers. But anyway, I'm at D.C. International, yes.
Make sure you keep close to your microphone if you can, please. Tonight we're going to focus on the FDA meetings that took place in D.C. That focused on the voices from chronic pain patients. If you have questions for Dr. Kline tonight, please call in at 415-915-2291. You can also chat live with our audience on YouTube channel Conspiracies Against Wellness live stream. Before we get going here, I just wanted to say I am personally so proud of all the chronic pain patients, family members, and friends that traveled to Washington, D.C. on behalf of our communities. You did such an amazing job. I know how difficult it is to travel and get ready, prepare speeches, take meetings, and so on. And it's a lot, even if you're healthy. And also, so many of you that couldn't travel, you did so much still by calling your reps, writing letters, talking and sharing information on social media. All of this is so important to do. Each person represents a piece of this puzzle. And without each one of you, this patient freedom movement would not be successful at all. Even by listening to the Doctor's Corner this evening and learning together and talking with one another, all of this is how we're going to go and change things. So how is Washington, D.C., Dr. Kline?
Washington, D.C. at this time of year is very hot. But beyond that, it was fine.
And how did the meetings go? Who did you meet while you were there?
Well, the meeting was set up by the FDA. Now, the FDA is the boss of all prescription drugs, including opioids. They are the agency that's in control.
Hey, Dr. Kline, it's a little bit hard to hear you. Can you? So sorry. There we go.
Oh, okay. Is that better?
Yes, much better. I can hear you now. Thank you. Okay, so the FDA...
FDA actually became interested in chronic pain patients. I don't know how, but they did. This is a gigantic federal agency in charge of drugs, as I said. They wanted to hear from people with chronic pain. And for 8 hours, they got an earful. People were put in a special section so that they could get priority with chronic pain. I had to sit in the back because I don't have chronic pain. They wanted to focus on the people with the problem. And they did a real nice job. They had 6 officials there from the FDA. 6. These people represented the cross-section of the departments at the FDA. This was not a Mickey Mouse thing. This was a serious, we want to hear from you thing. And believe me, they were impressed. And a lot of people were complaining about the CDC, and several of the FDA members said, we're here not to pass judgment. We're here to listen. So I consider it to be very successful because there was a lot of head nodding, and the questions they asked were perfect. For example, the moderator said, how many people sitting here who have chronic pain disease are having mild pain? No hands. How many are having moderate pain? A few hands. How many are having severe pain? Almost everybody's hand went up. So the courage of people to travel there with not enough medication. They asked, how many of you are getting adequate pain medicine? I think there were maybe 200 people there in chronic pain. So how many of you are getting adequate pain control. 6 hands went up out of 200. So they were asking the right questions, and they were getting the message. Now, a federal agency is not going to, say anything, but they are gathering information. Everything that was said in there was recorded, and this is basically testimony, like before Congress or like before a court. Very serious stuff.
Now, they kept talking about a docket. How important is it that people give information into this docket?
Very important. They urge people, send in your comments. If you want, send them in anonymously. We want to hear from you. And I'm going to give you how people can write in to get hold of the docket. But they said, look, we're listening. We're going to read every single one. And they had 1,000 on Monday.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
So
how important was it that people wrote into?
No, it's very important. And I want to give you how to quickly do that here on my phone, which I'm trying to balance.
I'll type it.
Okay, it's pretty simple. And you can write it down, too, and repeat it later. If you Google FDA 2018 -N as in Nancy -1621. If you Google that, it will take you to the comments, and there's a little button that says leave your comment, and you just leave whatever you want. Be brief.
Okay.
I would basically, like everybody was saying, we're undertreated. We're being screwed by the DEA and the CDC. And a lot of people were saying they were screwed by the FDA, but they aren't. The FDA is not in this. See, that's the good thing. They don't have a position. Their position is what they've already decided about drugs, and what they've already decided about opiates is doctors can treat to whatever it takes. I've said before, but I can legally prescribe opiates to anyone for any FDA-approved drug, which of course is all of them, to any dose that I feel will relieve the pain and not cause side effects. That's called titration. Same thing we do with insulin. There's no upper limit on insulin if you look at the FDA stuff. You use what you need. And that's because both drugs are basically safe. You can't use more than 4,000 milligrams of Tylenol a day because it has toxicity. It hurts your kidneys. You have to limit it. That's not true for opiates, and it's not true for insulin. So,
what were the overall goals for the FDA meeting, and were they accomplished?
Yes, they wanted information, and they got it. They got an earful from people. And they also took little polls. People had these clickers. It was kind of cute. You click, and you take this poll, and then in 2 seconds they show the poll with graphs. And, all the questions were perfect. They were really getting the information. What it's like to have chronic pain. What part of your life is interfered with. Are you having trouble?
It was on the internet, too.
Okay.
Yeah, because, I was watching it from the internet, and we got to vote, too, on the polls. And it showed us everything.
Okay, right. Yeah, they were talking about the webcast. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, they had about 5 different screens.
Okay.
They did a great job.
Out of their way. This is really important, wonderful news. And
we have
what they're going to do is what they're going to have to decide. Go ahead.
A question from YouTube. They want to know, do they understand that chronic pain patients are not the cause of the opioid crisis?
Yes, they do.
Okay, great.
Yep.
What outcomes do you think are going to occur from this? I've been seeing tons of comments and posts on social media. Many of the people state that they're now saying that they're thinking, things are going to finally change. Are people's expectations too high? What do you see that's going to happen?
I always tell my patients, look, you got a bad problem. You can hope and cope at the same time. So we're coping with the situation, and I think there is definitely reason to hope.
Can you get closer to your mic? Sorry. Or...
Sort of, I got this.
A cell phone.
Yeah. Okay. Is it still bad?
Yeah, no, that's much better.
Okay. I'll try to hold it.
Questions we're getting is, how long do you think this will take?
That I don't know. Remember, all things are political. And Scott Gottlieb, the head of the FDA, said we want to hear from pain patients. And then he makes a speech, we have to balance it against, the dope addict. So I don't know. I mean, I think that these people will definitely try to do something. And these were, kind of powerful people, I think. So we'll see. Fortunately, the treatment of pain itself is not a political issue. It's only the other stuff about, dopamine and overdose deaths. So I don't know. I think there's a very good chance FDA will do something. I'm going...
I can't hear that last part. Say that again.
I'm going to press for, I'm just going to have to hold the phone next to my ear.
That's much better. Yeah.
All right. Well, just keep telling me.
You spoke while you were there. What was your goal in speaking, and what did you say?
I really had no goal. I sat there for the whole meeting, and I was going to interrupt and present kind of a 4-minute thing, and then I found out I only had 2 minutes. So I just kind of made it up at the last minute. And what I did came to me, really, about 10 minutes at the end of the meeting, and that is the best way for the FDA to battle other agencies. See, they can't go to the CDC and tell them they made a mistake. They're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. But what they can do is they can publish their own little manual on the use of opiate medications to treat acute and chronic pain. And they can just take it from their already approved labeling requirements. In other words, they don't have to create anything, because the labeling for opiates has nothing to do with any 90 milligram cutoff. So all they have to do is just make the statement, this drug is titrated to an effective point, as is already in their documents. So that's what I'm going to write them and put in these public comments at that little website I gave you. I can do that too. It's a sneaky way to get information to them. Because otherwise, if this wasn't going on, I'd have to try to send letters to the various people and they'd throw them all away. This way, the whole team is reading these comments, and that's why it's very important for everybody to submit their little comments. The more it has to do with volume. If they get a lot of comments, they can tell the director, Scott Gottlieb, to say, look, we heard from all these people, and then we got 2,000 comments, which is a lot for these hearings. So you have it until September the 10th. Keep doing it. Get your friends to do it. Doesn't have to be long. This is what my life has been like without opiates, and this is what my life was like with opiates before I was involuntarily taken off. Just tell a little story.
Okay. And again, you said it was on Google FDA 2018-N-1621. That's how you get into the dockets if you want to submit anything. So please do that.
And right now, the government is listening to anything that you want to put. And like I said, if you're nervous, just make it anonymous. And they said that was fine.
Yeah. Okay, great. I noticed that there was a few groups sitting in the audience, ATIP, Tenant Tribe, and some Kratom advocates. Why were they there?
I don't know, and I didn't know they were there, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
I mean, I just came and sat in the back and started listening. So I don't know what they were doing. There was only one plant, a woman that said that she had a spinal stimulator, which according to our Twitter polls is only effective less than 25% of the time. So it means, 3 out of 4 people that get these things, it doesn't work. And then she said she had this fog from taking opiates. So she's trying to run down the opiates. Well, everybody in the audience started to murmur, no, that's not true, we don't get...
They couldn't hear.
Yeah, so they kind of dumped her.
Well, that's good. What about the Kratom? Why were they there? Were they just trying to get, so people know more about it? Like, when you speak at these things, what's the level of, ability to get out there?
Well, basically, it was an audience of people raising their hands and then being recognized and given a microphone. And only one woman talked about Kratom. So, and the FDA people warned everybody. They said, look, there's people outside peddling things, and we don't allow that. So even though there were Kratom groups there, I only heard from one person. So, I mean, they may be putting comments on, the docket, but they didn't really have anything to do with the meeting.
Yeah.
And neither Ray did.
People wanted to know on YouTube, was U.S. Pain Foundation there?
I don't know.
That you know? Okay.
No.
I've heard people also concerned that the government will possibly only listen to people that talk about other alternatives like medications, therapies, or whatever, if it's brought up. Is that true at all, or are people just getting nervous?
It's not true for the FDA. The FDA still has opiates as the first line of treatment. Everybody else trying to get everybody to use alternative treatments. And remember, the word alternative treatment is also adjunct treatment. The word adjunct means in addition to.
Okay.
These alternate treatments are intended to be used in addition to the drug of choice, opiates. That's what the CDC illegally tried to change. They have no business doing that. In other words, first you start on the drug that works. And you don't go into warfare with sticks. So you don't battle a serious problem with alternate adjuncts. You go in with the big cannon. And the big cannon that works 90% of the time is opiate medication. So if you want to use alternatives, you can only do that when your big gun does not work. So if it doesn't work, then you got to try these other things. Or adjunct, added to. Take the opiate pain medicine and then try a little PT or try a little something else to see if it makes it even better. So a lot of people have found that spoke there that these other things helped, but they didn't. They're not first-line treatment. That's insanity. I mean, to even think that for people that actually practice medicine and have medical degrees is beyond belief.
Yeah. We have a call.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Caller from area code 701. What's your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline?
This is Beth Steckler. I just wanted to ask him in regards to what is his thoughts about these upcoming bills. I think 50 to 80 bills regarding opioids.
Well, you know what? They've been putting these bills in since 1950. If you read the New York Times in 1950, they're all filing these bills. And the reason is because the federal government caused the opioid crisis by making drugs illegal and arresting doctors. So they don't know what to do. What they need to do is figure out why they caused it. So they run around like chickens with their heads cut off, passing bills, as they did in the 50s and the 60s, and ad infinitum, that will do nothing. So I'm not too worried because most of the bills get watered down. They realize they're not doctors, and they realize they can't go around doing things like trying to limit drugs. So my hunch is nothing is going to happen. They will spend another $5 billion added to the trillion they've already spent and get nowhere. So, I mean, I wait for people to tell me if there's some dangerous bill being passed, especially those trying to limit pain medicine to milligrams. And if that occurs, then we really need to storm Washington, D.C. But it's hard to keep up with all these bills, and Congress submits 100 bills and maybe 10 make it. So it's important to realize that just because a bill is introduced doesn't mean it's going to make it all the way. But we still need to be vigilant. And there's a lot of folks out there that follow this, and they should let us all know if it's starting to drift in the direction of a dangerous piece of legislation. So.
Beth, did you have another question?
Well, no. Okay, my understanding was actually that there were a couple of bills that had been passed that limited the, like, for example, if you had surgery, you got 3 pills. Are those just suggestions right now? Or
okay, I don't know if I need some information, and I'll check into it. But you see, there's a lot of rumors flying around because there's an election coming up, and there's so much money available, people are lined up to get hold of it. It would surprise me if Congress actually passed that kind of a law, but let me know if they have or it's getting close.
Mm-hmm.
You see, they shouldn't be doing this without the FDA, and they know that. You can't pass bills to, build a new warship without checking with the Defense Department. So, they're going to need to check with the FDA. But,
Thank you, Beth. Beth, anything else? No? Okay, thank you. We have another caller from area code 704. What's your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline?
Hi, this is actually Jessica, and I actually know about one of these bills. There's 58 bills, and we actually really need to get involved, and if you guys need information, I'll get it to you. But one of these bills is actually giving incentives to hospitals to not use any type of pain medication as far as it being an opiate during surgery through syringe. And if they choose to not do that, they will get they'll get an amount of money.
Okay, now the important thing is to find out where the bill is in the process.
I've got them all. I can forward them both to you.
Okay, has it gone to the committees yet for approval?
Not yet, but it is in front of legislation, and they're voting extremely soon.
All right, well, yeah, let me know, and then we'll put out the word. People got to jump on their congressman. Wow, that's
it's
really
bad.
Horrible.
I mean, they're going to give you surgery. You're not going to get a spinal tap. You know what I mean? You're not going to get a shot of Dilaudid if your arm's been cut in half. It's sad, but I thought I'd let you guys know it's serious.
Yeah, no, it's important to keep tracking it, Jessica, because we need people out there tracking, and I know you're one of them.
I am fighting really hard.
So then, we find that it's getting too dangerous, we'll put out the word and get everybody calling their senators and stuff and say, Senator, remember, if you go into surgery, they're not going to give you any pain medicine. Just want you to be ready.
Exactly. They're really not.
Wow.
And by the way, about 5,000 people, sorry to say it, but Janelle's aware of it. Don't Punish Pain rally on Facebook. We're going to have a national rally on September 18th, and this is where we're getting this info. But I'll make sure that these laws hit your inbox.
Yeah, keep tracking them.
On it.
Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Let's see. We had another question on YouTube. I'm just trying to see where it went. Okay. Does the FDA have the power to get CDC, DEA to send the guidelines?
No. Agencies don't interfere with other agencies. It's kind of like neighbors don't interfere with other neighbors. But they know there's a problem, and they have the power to fix the problem by simply providing doctors with the proper science about the medications. And they are the only ones that can determine that. In other words, if they say there's no, you see, by not saying anything about the 90 milligram cutoff, if they say titrate to, a suitable endpoint, that will kill the 90 milligram cutoff. So that's how they can take care of another agency.
Is there any way that they're going to be able to use so they can try to push this through? Is there? I mean, what? what would be the smart move on their side to do it if they could? And is there anything that we can do to help so
what
they
I'm
aren't able
going
to
suggest soon is I'm drafting a proposal for the FDA to write this manual, and I think it really would be easy for them to do, and I think it would solve a lot of problems. Doctors would read the FDA guidelines for opiate use, and when they don't say anything about the 90 milligrams, they don't say anything about how you have to stop giving benzodiazepines, you just have to monitor carefully. If they're willing to do that, then it's time for us to go to all our representatives with this document and say to the FDA, what do you think of this plan? This sounds like a plan that would solve a lot of problems. And you see, by doing that, by just having a manual on the proper use of opiates, not any other drug, just opiates, that doesn't get into the problem of interdiction and DEA. In other words, it stays out of it. So it's just a pure science approach, and that's what doctors need. Because as soon as it says there's no cutoff, then there's no arresting doctors for prescribing too much.
Right.
Because the milligrams don't matter. So I don't know, the more I think about this, the more I think it's a good idea. And if everybody agrees, we'll circulate it around, and then we'll take it to the Congress people. Because when you do something, when you're offering information to an agency, if it's followed up by Congress calls over there and says, hey, we've been hearing about this proposal. Well, this sounds like a good proposal. So it's called double D.
Yeah, there was a question on there was a question on YouTube. Does the FDA need to inform Congress about what they heard at the meeting before they vote on these bills?
Yes. If they're voting, if Congress is voting on bills, they're going to have to be talking to the FDA. You can't just make a bill that affects prescription drugs without talking to the FDA. So, yes, I think Congress will hear about this.
I just wanted to remind everybody out there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, if anybody has a question for Dr. Kline or a comment, please call in at 415-915-2291. We have a question from Stephanie Logan on YouTube. Will the FDA show other powers to be what is really happening in this part of opioid crisis? I'm not sure. In this part of the opioid crisis,
I think it's going to go through the back hall. I mean, that's how things work in politics. People are going to be having lunch together, and the FDA person will be having lunch with a congressional aide, and they'll say, my God, we had this meeting the other day. You have no idea what's really going on out there. I mean, we heard it firsthand. Oh, I see, says the congressional aide. Congressional aide goes back to the office. Senator, you would not believe what I just heard from the FDA. That's different than what I heard from Barbara, my friend. This is what I've heard from the FDA. So, yes, I think this is going to spread. And, if it weren't, for the people making it there, it would have never worked.
Yeah.
People were in wheelchairs and on canes and sitting there in obvious pain, under-treated, under-medicated, just politely telling their stories.
Yeah, they really did a great job. Everybody did. What did people say afterwards? What was the word on the street? What were you hearing?
Surprisingly enough, there wasn't that much talk afterwards. It was kind of like a class. You just go home. Everybody was tired. It was 4:30. They'd been at this for 8 hours. And so there wasn't a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of cloakroom buzz. So I think people just felt like, okay, we've done our part, and we'll go home, and it's up to the FDA. But remember, more comments. They're taking comments until September, which means, by the way, that they're not going to put anything in writing until that time, until they've heard all the comments. That's how the rule works. Because they might be getting a comment on the last day that's real important. So, but they're going to be talking and thinking and which is good, you know. Don't rush into this. Just think about what people are telling you. So.
We have another caller. Caller, welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your question for Dr. Kline? Oh, never mind. It was dropped. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Oh, I wanted to ask you, so what did you do anything else? And did anybody else go and see senators, or was there any other interesting
No,
news?
it was pretty much everybody just pulled up and went through security, and I had to take my belt off, you know, before entering the FDA building, and my pants almost fell down. But, you know, once I got through security, everything was fine. And we went to, you know, the public area. And people were just there kind of on business. That was kind of like a business meeting instead of a political meeting. We were just there to give information to the FDA after they asked for it. Asked for it. We didn't ask for it. They asked for it. That's a big difference. And so everybody was pretty much, even during the lunch, you know, people were just chatting and, you know, about other things and, you know, not making plans. So it was just a straightforward meeting.
We have a caller. Caller, what's your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline? Hello? Hello, caller. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name and what's your question? Hello? Oh, I guess they're not there. All right. Let's see here. What else do you what's next? What are you working on next, and what do you see that's going to be happening next, coming up?
Okay, well, they're going to continue to listen, and I want to draft this proposal that they put out their own manual. They're really the only ones that have the authority to do that, so I'm going to be working hard on that, passing it around for comments and stuff, and then I want it to become official. I'm going to put it on the docket, and then if it looks good, we can put it out on the web for people to make copies and take to their legislators, because that would be the next thing that needs to be done, maybe in August. The timing's important. You know, politicians have different agendas, and people at FDA have got other projects to work on, so, and I don't think they're going to draft anything until after September the 1st. So, but we can make a big push and try to promote this idea, you know, and everybody agrees. I mean, just because I think it's a wonderful idea doesn't necessarily mean that it is, although I do kind of like my own ideas. But beyond that, you know, we'll make this a community effort.
H. Ross from YouTube asked, I was wondering if there are any people at the FDA hearings that opposed opioids, like someone who was affected negatively by them.
Boy, good question. And the answer is one or two people. And that was it. I mean, the message was getting across that these drugs work if you give enough, and they're being taken away. So they're not working. And that message came through strong and clear. One person said opiates didn't work, so they tried all these other methods, and some things worked. But really, trying to think now, I think it was just one person. So the message got across: these drugs do work, and they work well if you give enough. So that's good news. And they didn't. And they asked about other treatments, but they didn't belabor them. You know, and nothing came through from the FDA officials to indicate they thought one way or the other. One woman did speak up. You know, remember now she's a government employee. She spoke up and tried to make people relax that FDA did not have an agenda. That was big. That was really big. You know, we want to hear from you people. We do not have an agenda. You know, so it was really, I was impressed.
Were there any doctors there at all besides you?
I didn't see any. They didn't have any doctors on the panel because it really was for pain patients. So I was really kind of an interloper, you know, and so I had to actually put my name. I got there early so I could put my name on that 30 minutes at the end, the 2-minute thing. You had to sign up for it, you know, and if I was a little late, I would have never gotten to speak, and then I would have been mad.
Stacy Field says Dr. Lewis is there. I forgot.
Oh,
Dr.
okay.
Terry Lewis.
Oh, yeah,
That's
she's
right.
there. Terry's a Ph.D., though. So, but still a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Terry was there. We chatted.
Right. Did they realize? So they realized that opioids or pain medication was safe.
Yes.
Like it's not an issue like they thought it was.
Right.
What did they think about addiction? Did they say a lot about that?
Not discussed. So you see what
even
they're
though
doing,
it's
which is smart.
A disease.
You know, they're trying to keep this purely on chronic pain patients, and I think that's the way to go. Even though addiction is a very important part, because that's what scares people, they're not going to tell doctors what to do. Nobody is. You know, all you can do is present them with the scientific evidence. That's what the FDA has been doing for years. I mean, if I want to use drug X, I look it up, you know, and find out what the FDA says about it. So they're doing the ideal thing, which is keeping it pure pharmacological science, because that's their job, and staying away from all political issues.
Yeah, that's great. What about health insurance? Did they talk about health insurance and, you know, pharmacies and, you know, the other issues that have been popping up?
Yes, they asked some questions on their polls. Are you having trouble with the pharmacies? A lot of people said yes. A lot of people also having a large group really helped from this standpoint. One person stands up and says, you know, I'm really having trouble with the pharmacy, and then you get a lot of hooting and cheering, you know, from the rest of the group, and then that impressed them, you know, from the FDA. You know, it's not just one person. Everybody's going, yes, we're having a terrible time, you know. So it was brought up only in that way. They did not have a lot of specific questions about pharmacies because, again, they don't have jurisdiction. They do have the jurisdiction of the medicines that go through the pharmacy, but not the pharmacy behavior.
Aaron Sells from YouTube asks, is the purpose of these FDA hearings to come up with more guidelines for prescribing, i.e. guidelines that clarify or reject the CDC guidelines entirely? What are they looking for?
Whenever a hearing is held, they're looking for information to identify a problem. Once they identify a problem, then they go into, what are we going to do about the problem? Code. They are in Part A. They are gathering information, and they're trying to be non-judgmental, which is the best way to gather information. In other words, you just listen. That's what Fred Rogers said about kids, too. When you're talking to kids, you just listen. So listening is a skill that's for everybody. And if the government can listen without jackknifing opinions, that's wonderful. It's the same with doctors, you know. If doctors just listen and get a history from people, it's a lot more effective than interrupting them after the first sentence and saying, oh, no, that's wrong, or how come that happened? You know, that's not listening. Fred Rogers is right, listening, and that's what they're doing.
Do you think that they're going to change these guidelines? Like, I mean, will they rewrite these?
They can't. CDC has the prerogative of writing their own guidelines. The VA has written their own guidelines, but they can write counter guidelines. They can write their own guidelines, and that's what we're going at. Because if you've got a pile of guidelines, one from the CDC, one from the VA, and one from the FDA, the doctors are going to read the one from the FDA. So what you'll have then is a choice of 3 documents to pick from. Right now, there's no counterpoint document out there, just us screaming and yelling. And so the agencies just shine us on. Well, we're the agency. We've written this. I don't care if you're complaining. So.
Question from YouTube. If the CDC is the problem, are they investigating their insane guidelines?
Well, it's interesting that the FDA panel actually was supportive, and that one woman stood up and said the FDA was required by its scientific advisory committee to do follow-up and check into any fallout that occurs. And so the woman from the FDA said, have you contacted them? In other words, get off your ass, and write these letters and find this committee and write them and tell them what's going on. I thought it was a great idea. It was very supportive, In other words, she's saying this is the way it works in the government, If somebody's not doing their job, you write them a letter and ask why they're not doing their job.
We're also getting a lot of questions about doctors. They're only listening to the CDC. So does that mean that they would listen to the FDA instead of the CDC?
Absolutely.
Okay.
See, the FDA,
we have another caller. Caller from
is the only regulatory agency with the authority to deal with prescription drugs. That's why they are the boss. They have the trump card. So.
Right. Caller from area code 704. What's your name and what's your question? Hello? Caller from area code 704? I guess they're not coming on. Oh, there they are. Hi. What's your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline? Hello from 704. Okay, I guess they're not on. Sorry about that. If anybody does have any questions, again, you could call in at 415-915-2291. We have a question. So how do we stop DEA from attacking what's left of our doctors?
That's tricky. You've got an attorney general who is arresting doctors, pharmacists, and even CEOs of drug companies. This is very difficult. These people have a lot of power in Congress. Shakes in their boots. The only thing to do is to write to your senators and your representatives and tell them that, these raids are putting thousands and thousands of people with chronic pain disease who need their pain medicines out on the street. And once they're put on the street, they become lepers. And no one will take them because now they are tainted. Oh, you were in a practice that was closed? Oh, you must be a junkie. So actually one of the recommendations I put in my first comment to the FDA is the FDA maybe could start a registry of doctors who take patients. Now, they probably won't do that, but still, it'll make them think. It's getting so bad that they're going to probably need to send out the public health service doctors from the public health service to run mobile clinics. I mean, what else are you going to do? So the DEA is you just got to write your senators and your congressmen and, be polite. Say the DEA needs to stick to criminals and stay out of the doctor's offices, unless they have probable cause. So.
We have a question on YouTube. If you write up your recommendation, can everybody see it?
Of course. As a matter of fact, before I send it in, I'll circulate it because people have good ideas and we can all work on it and make it a document that's good enough to take to the senators and representatives and say, look, we're submitting this to the FDA as a solution and we would like to have your support. Yep. I'll put it out on my Medium, on my Twitter.
Okay. We have another caller from area code 704. What's your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline?
Hi, I apologize. It's Jessica again. Dr. Kline,
Hi, apologize, Jessica.
I'm sorry. About doctors, I've actually been contacted by two doctors. Some of you may know Dr. Lynn Webster. I was contacted by another doctor, Dr. Litham, who's in Durham. And unfortunately, they're both on our side, and they understand what's going on. However, one won the fight and one did not, basically, for treating people like us. Is there any type of site or forum for physicians, such as yourself, Dr. Kline, or Dr. Laird, to where maybe these other physicians I'm speaking to can talk with you guys? Like, do you have like a site and where physicians and patients can come together to kind of combat this other than just Twitter? I feel like we need one site for all of us to go to so that we can show them that we're together.
Yeah, you really have a good idea, and so that makes me want to go home and join the physician only have a license.
I'm sorry, this cut out. I cannot hear anything. It's my phone. I apologize.
No, that's a very good idea, and I'm going to join one of these big doctor, I don't know what you call them, websites where they exchange information. There are no websites I know of that doctors and patients can get together, and that's really too bad. But you have very good ideas. And
well, I personally started thinking about doing a nonprofit organization, and I've thought of a name, and I would love everyone's help with it, where all of us can come together and demand that we have the right to humane health. I mean, it's sad when the United Nations is actually saying that all of us, the United States, and they quoted, we are being tortured. It's inhumane. And it's sad. And I feel like if we had a joined force, we can do more.
Well, it's interesting that the famous diabetes doctor, Dr. Elliot, God, what's his name, many years ago.
DeLuca?
The old diabetes doctor for many years ago. Very famous. Anyway, I'll think of his name in a minute. He wrote a book called A Diabetic Manual for Doctors and Patients. That's unique in medicine. So if you want to start a website or something, make it, paying patients for doctors and patients. Make the website for doctors and patients. Now, if you get doctors, it'll be a miracle, because doctors are very insular. They don't like talking to anybody. They just kind of sit there at their desk, and it's too bad. But one of the things I have in my palliative care is a way for doctors to make more money seeing pain patients. They can get paid for the extra time dealing with the pharmacist. So that word could get out on a website like this. In other words, a doctor like me could get on the website for doctors and patients and say to the doctor, look, if you've got to spend an hour on the phone with a pharmacy, guess what? You can get paid for that. And that's something new.
Maybe like an app.
Yeah. No, you have a great idea, and pursue that and see if we can figure out a way to pull doctors and patients together. When I first started this, I said, doctors and patients have to hold hands, and we're never going to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that doctor was Elliot P. Jocelyn, right?
Jocelyn, yes.
For Diabetic Manual.
Yes, Dr. Jocelyn, who was an amazing man, and unfortunately he ruined diabetic treatment, but we'll go into that another time.
Well, these doctors came to
Did you have any other thing?
I would just like to say, if we can get this started, and everyone listening, and in fact, I think both of these doctors are probably listening right now. I gave them the site and told them it was live. But they really hurt the one that's in Durham.
Yeah, the nice thing about these sites is that you can talk and communicate on the site or not.
Exactly.
But you can also listen. Fred Rogers listening. You can listen and not say anything if you don't want to.
Okay.
So pursue this.
We're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay, wait a minute.
Okay, I just wanted to ask, because I didn't see any type of United site, and I've never had two physicians speak to me, and especially the one I just spoke to. I explained all of my conditions, the EDS, the spinal problems, the herniated the disc, the fibroids, all of this, and he said 75% of people like you will have lumbar pain. And he said, I treated people like you. But they literally shut him down, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they did.
The
DEA did shut him down. I was surprised how many SCS patients were at the meeting. Quite a few.
Wow. Wow.
EDS patients, Ehlers-Danlos patients. So you have a great idea, and I want you to pursue it, and stay in touch with me. Thank you.
Well, then thank you. You guys will be hearing from me shortly because I've already got the name set, and we're about to have it set up. So we're going to make this work. Thanks, guys.
Good. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, Jess. Question from YouTube. H. Ross says, does Dr. Kline think that the FDA hearings will influence or change the opinion of the FDA Commissioner, Dr. Scott Gottlieb?
Yes, because he will listen to his scientists. If his scientists come to him and say, we got 7 million people, he's going to think, wow, that's 7 million voters. That's a pretty decent voting bloc. It's 3% of the United States population, and you know what? Most political elections are won by anywhere from 1 to 3%. Yeah. So, I think if they can carry the numbers, the big numbers that I mentioned in the end, that's the thing. 7 million people. If they said, look, there's 200 people with this, they're not going to tell me that.
Aaron Sells from YouTube says, is palliative care the only way to persuade a pain doctor or primary care if they agree to write the order to increase my pain medication? Can the PCP write an order for in-home palliative care?
Yes, they can, and that's why it's important to get a copy of my palliative care document that explains all that. It's not a big program. The physician themselves can decide if a person has palliative care status, which is simply you have a disease you can't treat. But that's everybody, out there. And if they read, that's why it's important to send my paper to them in the mail or drop it off. Don't take it in with the appointment. They got to sit and read it. And they're going to find out this isn't as hard as they think. And you see, because it's in all the laws and it's in the first line of the CDC guideline, if you declare somebody has palliative care status, then you're safe because it's okay to do that. Yeah.
Right.
So.
We have a caller from 817. What's your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline?
Dr. Kline, this is Teresa, and I was wondering, I found out after the fact that the FDA came in and looked through my doctor's files and tried, just comb through everything, and they didn't shut him down, and they didn't take anything. What is it that they're after? I mean, he does exactly the same thing. He's got the same kinds of patients. He treats only pain patients. He does procedures, but his largest thing is prescriptions. So how come he didn't get shut down?
Okay, first of all, it's not the FDA. It's the CDC and the DEA. The DEA is the Federal Drug Police. We're the only country in the world that I've found so far that has a separate federal police for drugs. So what it was the DEA was snooping through his file. What they're doing is they're looking to hang doctors. Because people 2 years ago said that doctors are causing the epidemic. The head of the CDC at the time, Thomas Frieden, made public comments that the doctors are responsible for the opioid epidemic, that it was a doctor problem. Okay, once that's determined, then the police have to act, right? So the doctors are causing it. So now we got to go arrest the doctors because they're causing the problem. So it was Thomas Frieden, director of the CDC, that started this, and people need to visit him and take him out behind the woodshed and have him meet some people with chronic pain.
Right.
He started it.
Did you have anything else?
And
I just don't know
what doctor got through it.
And my husband wouldn't tell me because he knows I've been dreading that very same thing happening. And one day I kind of just sort of fell apart, thinking that there's going to come a day when it all crumbles underneath me. And he finally told me, he knows someone that works at the clinic, and they had told him that they'd already done this. I mean, what is it that he must have done different? Maybe kept better records?
Good question. He needs to call me and let me know so I can put it in an article. Because I'm preparing an article for doctors on how to immunize their practices against raids and things. And I'm going to be writing it with the lawyer. So if he could contact me, you can get him to contact me. That would be great. Because understanding how he got through it is important for other doctors to know.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking, and I was wondering if you knew.
No, I don't. And, if you could contact him and help us out.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll be happy to talk with him on the phone or email or, pigeon. Bernice the pigeon.
I'll get in touch with him this week.
Thanks, Teresa.
You're welcome, and I'll get back and let Janelle know. Okay.
All righty, thank you. That's important information.
You. All right, thank you so much. We have another question. Meritus Morgan says, can you explain the difference in CDC, FDA, and the DEA, please?
Okay, the DEA is federal police. They're a federal police force set up by Richard Nixon to enforce the Controlled Substance Act, which allows the federal government to control the manufacture, distribution of pain medicines, but not the prescription. That's the FDA. FDA is the Food and Drug Administration. It is in charge of approving all medicines that all prescription medicines, and they write what's called labeling instructions. In other words, they write the instruction manual for how to use that particular drug. So they are in charge of drug approvals. So if a person is having trouble with a drug, they report it to the FDA, and the FDA looks into it. The CDC is used to be called the Communicable Disease Center, and they collect data. So they collect data on how many people have influenza. And then they say, looks like this is rising, so we're going to declare an epidemic of influenza. So they were in the contagion business, but then they started to collect data on poisonings. I don't know why, but they did. They started to collect data on poisonings. And then a fellow by the name of Leonard Palozzi, who is a prop member, he belongs to the group of Andrew Kolodny, works for the CDC, and he wrote a paper that said basically drug overdoses are poisonings. So we should be following them. And to eliminate poisonings, you eliminate the substance that causes the poisoning. So therefore, if we eliminate opiates, we're not going to have any poisoning. So that's kind of how the CDC got into the business of opiates. They're only in charge of collecting data. They are not in charge of making recommendations. As a matter of fact, when this all started 2 years ago, I went to the CDC website. There was nothing on their website about opiates. And here they are writing a disastrous, harmful physician guideline on how to prescribe drugs that they have no right to do. So.
We have one more caller. Caller, welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name and what's your question for Dr. Kline?
Hi, this is Julie in New York City. Hi, Dr. Kline.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Janelle. Hi. I was on the phone today. I'm dramatic. I'm from New York, so I had an idea. With all of these laws, the only way, we can't stop them. Maybe we can override them with something new. So I called my governor again. Being dramatic, I asked for a stay of execution or an exemption, basically a note saying any doctor who treats me will not be targeted by the DEA. They can't be touched. I'm medically necessary, just something like that. So they passed me to the health board, and then I talked to the narcotics board, and they couldn't come up with a good enough reason to say, except that that's not the way things are, to do this. So they said they're going to think about it and come back to me. I was wondering, I don't know, I know it's dramatic, but an exemption. can we get, do you think that it's, I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but since we're treated like criminals, and criminals are allowed a stay of execution, why not us? Why can't we?
Well, there are there are patient protection laws. The best one is in California, and I suggest looking that up. Patient protection law. Rhode Island is working on one. I know some folks that are working on one there, but get the law first, and then you can use that as an example because it's already a law in a state. So it'll have all the proper passages.
Can they protect us, though, from federal intervention, interference?
No, they can't.
That's the problem.
You can't.
But can a governor stop it?
No, you cannot.
That's what I'm wondering.
The federal government. No.
They're going to find out if a governor can override something.
No, you can't override the
Well, you know what? They've made all these new rules that we never thought were possible, so maybe. I don't know. I'm thinking.
Well, I would.
New laws. Maybe we need new laws, too, to protect us.
I think so. Yeah. Well, thanks for calling.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kline. Thanks, Janelle.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Well, we're going to wrap up here. Any last comments for this evening?
No, I think this is very hopeful. We have to hope and hope, but this is the first time I've felt really hopeful.
Oh, I can't hear you. Say that again.
This is the...
Dr. Kline?
Okay, wait a minute. Now, how's that?
There you go.
This is...
I can hear you now.
Okay, this is the first time I've felt really hopeful. I think this was an extremely positive thing. You can't predict tomorrow.
That's great.
But, I think this is going to work. I really do.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kline, for joining us this evening. I hope you have a safe flight back to North Carolina.
Well, and this airport I just discovered has a Dunkin' Donuts.
Uh-oh. I was going to say a donut place, huh?
Yeah. So I have to go there right now.
Are they fresh?
They are. They're pretty fresh. It's Dunkin' Donuts.
You'll be there the whole entire time. We'll have to come up and get you.
Oh, okay. I got to go now.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Well, enjoy your donuts. Enjoy your flight. Bye-bye. Tomorrow, we are actually going to be having a show. We weren't going to, but Dr. Steve Henson's going to be our guest, and we're going to talk about the FDA circus, the CDC lies and deceit, pharmacology of Ultram, audit of the DEA, the CEA, and the DEA history of running drugs and weapons. You guys are not going to want to miss tomorrow night. Well, thank you, Con Nation, for joining us on another Tuesday evening at the Doctor's Corner. I'm Janelle Elgoy, signing off for the evening. Until tomorrow, have a good night.
You've been listening to The Doctor's Corner with Dr. Kline and Janelle Elgoy. Copyright 2018 by EXG LLC. All rights reserved.